Guys, our next guest is the gold standard when it comes to MMA analysts. You know his tremendous work on his channel, Full Reptile and BT Sport, with a Dan Hardy breakdown show, summing up the best previews and breakdowns. And he is kind enough, he is good enough to join us once again to preview UFC 279. The one, the only Dan Hardy. Welcome back to Submission Radio, man. Thanks for joining us.
No worries, guys. Always good to talk to you.
The pleasure is all ours, Dan. So UFC 279, man, what an event for a lot of reasons. What a fight for a lot of reasons. But let's not beat around the bush, man. I feel like there's a lot of questions and yet there's not. So let's just start with the burning one. Since everybody's expecting Khamzat Chimaev to go in there and obviously beat Nate Diaz, do you think Nate Diaz has a chance to win? And if so, what do you think is Nate's path to victory?
Well, I mean, of course, you know, the reason why we're all tuning in is because there's a possibility that Nate Diaz can win, you know, and he reminded us of that in the last fight against Leon. I mean, you know, being able to tag him with that left hand, you know, minute before the end of the fight and almost steal it away from him. That could, you know, I mean, you think if that had been a minute or 2 minutes earlier, or maybe if Khamzat Chimaev gets tired before the beginning of the fourth round, because the thing is, I was more concerned for Nate up to the point when I saw Khamzat fight Gilbert Burns, because in the Gilbert Burns fight we saw him pushed, we saw him work, and we saw him not be able to finish his opponent easily. And you know, you could see Andreas Michael in the corner between rounds just going crazy at him because he was getting a little bit scrappy. And they're the fights where Nate finds his way in. Honestly, I expect Chimaev to be just too physically strong for him, and I think that the damage that Nate's suffered over the years is just going to be up against him before the first round even starts. I mean, I've been watching through his career the last couple of days, and I've been charting the damage of scar tissue on him, and you know, like this one above his eye was from Kurt Pellegrino back in like 2008, 2009. And it's been opening up over and over again. Then Masvidal opened a new one up, and McGregor opened a new one up here, and Leon opened up a new one here. There's a lot of damage on his face, and Chimaev is very, very efficient with taking people down, smashing them up against the fence, and beating them up and making them bloody. You know, the one thing I will say about Chimaev is the way that his approach to takedowns have changed since his first fight in the UFC to his fight against the Leech. I mean, you know, he went from an efficient takedown against John Phillips, ran him into the fence along the floor. Against Reese McKee, he shot in, picked him up, carried him over to his corner and put him down. Obviously, no takedown in his next fight because it wasn't long enough. But then against the Leech, it was a pickup and a carry over to Dana. And it's almost like he's getting more comfortable and more confident. And whether that's changed after the Gilbert Burns fight, we'll have to wait and see, because that might have been a good wake-up call for him. But if he gets in there expecting to be able to just roll through Nate Diaz and kind of make an example of him in the first round, that's where it comes unstuck and Nate finds himself in the fourth round going, now what? Whack. And honestly, if I'm daydreaming, that's the only way I can see Nate doing it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of what everybody is expecting, right? Like, if he's going to do it, probably maybe in the later rounds. How would you see it happening, though? Because the other thing is, with Nate, I always think back to that Gray Maynard smashing, right? But he doesn't typically have massive, massive knockout power. He can certainly hurt you on the feet. Like you mentioned, he hurt Leon, but it's not that kind of one-shot, put-you-away power. And then with the submissions, I mean, we haven't seen Nate get a submission for a while. Obviously, there was the infamous McGregor one, but if it does go into later rounds, if Khamzat still has a little bit in the tank, how do you see Nate actually doing it? Let's say he's down 3 rounds. There's 2 left. He would have to finish him, right? Finish Chimaev.
Yeah, I mean, I think he would have to. I think it would be a case of him either pushing him and making him work to the point where he's tired, or hitting him with something that hurts him and rocks him. And you know, the thing that Leon did right is that he got on his toes and he was moving and he was trying to stay away from Nate. And Nate made the mistake of not capitalizing on it. But Chimaev in that same circumstance might go to his comfortable skill set, which is wrestling, and he might shoot straight into Nate. And of course, that worked against McGregor because he ended up getting rear naked choked. But that is the only rear naked choke on Nate's record. But he has 4 triangles and 4 guillotines. And if you look at the way that he lands his guillotine, he wraps the neck. He goes really deep with his arm, and he overhooks them into the armpit. So he has a good grip on them, no matter where the fight goes. And everyone, I mean, what have you got? You've got Junior Asuncao early on. You've got Jim Miller was his last guillotine. I mean, every one of them is the same. Marcus Davis, same, up against the fence, really high into the neck. Like, that could be an obvious way for him to finish. If Chimaev's a bit tired or he's hurt and he reaches in and he gets tangled up. The triangle is the other one, of course. But again, like you said, if you take the rear naked choke out of it, which was 2016, which was still a long time ago now. His last submission was Jim Miller, 2013. And what you were saying about his striking is correct. And this is a number for you. So he's in the rankings for total strikes. He's landed 2,386 total strikes, but he's only ever scored 4 knockdowns. So that shows you that he's over 500 and something strikes per knockdown.
Wow,
which is really a bad stat. If you're a boxer, he's gonna have to hit Chimaev a lot, or at least get him tired and then hit him.
And sorry, just before you go, Dennis, I just want to clarify. When I said he hasn't had a lot of submissions, I meant recently, not as in total. I meant recently. You'd have to go back to the McGregor one, 2016. That's what I meant.
I mean, this is the thing. Like people, we talk about Diaz, and people play this little highlight reel in their head that he's not Nate Diaz now. Nate's had one fight during Chimaev's whole UFC career. Like, Chimaev was 10 when Nate turned pro. Like, they're at different points in their lives, not only in their careers. Like, the Nate that people remember is that Gray Maynard, wham, 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 slapping the hell out of him, first round TKO. I mean, that was 30 odd strikes without Gray going down. And then, the submissions, but you're going back years before, years aside from the McGregor one. It's been a while. And his thing now is his toughness. And unfortunately, toughness comes with scar tissue.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here super impressed with you, Dan, knowing exactly the strikes, the knockdowns. I'm shocked over here, but then I shouldn't be shocked because we're speaking with one of the best guys in the game. I'm curious though, dude, like the mental pressure here. For example, Chimaev against Burns. A lot of people were like, all right, well, like Gilbert Burns, he's a top-ranked guy. There's a bit of leeway here for Khamzat if he so happens to lose. Khamzat versus Nate, Nate basically a lightweight that doesn't really want to cut down anymore. And Chimaev really a middleweight that's down in the welterweight division. And everybody expects him to go in there and absolutely dominate Nate Diaz. How do you think he handles that mental pressure? Because we saw how he handled the Gilbert Burns fight. Didn't go well, but he says he learned from that experience. But I imagine going into this fight, that mental pressure is going to be double or triple.
And the fact that he's a Nate fan. Grew up watching this guy.
I mean, there is that, but if he's actually a Nate fan, he'll have a realistic perspective of who he is right now as a fighter, and I think he'll feel more than confident that he can handle who that person is. Like, he's not going to be able to. He's not going to struggle taking Nate down. Like, the struggle is giving Nate respect on the floor because his jiu-jitsu is a bit scrappy and a bit untidy. Like, he tumbles and scrambles and makes mistakes, which, in my opinion, gives some of his opponents confidence, especially, early on in his career against the likes of Junior Asuncao. Like, you could see where he was kind of giving bad position and then recovering because, like, he's scrappy on the feet, he's scrappy on the ground. It's his style. And I think Chimaev is going to look at that jiu-jitsu and think, my size, my power, my wrestling is going to be able to just lock that down and take it away from him. I think he's going to come in supremely confident, and I think he knows that he's kind of being brought in as a bit of a hitman to end any strength of Nate Diaz's brand before he moves on from the UFC. Which, if anything, it gives Nate strength. I think it gave Ngannou strength when he was going into his last fight with his relationship with the UFC. I think this one gives Nate strength going into it because he's a gangster. That's how he is. That's how his mind works. He's at war with the system. He's at war with the corporation, and that's what the UFC represents to him. And I think, like, you've got to think how this fight came about, and it's been kind of discussed here and there, and he's difficult to do a deal with, and he called out Ngannou, and this kid is different, etc., etc. look, Nate's at the end of his contract, and he knows full well that they were going to try and use him to bring McGregor's stock back up in the UFC before he moved on. And he was adamant that he didn't want to do that for Conor McGregor. So they went, okay, well, you've got Conor or you've got Chimaev. They're your two options. And you know what Nate Diaz's response is? He went, F you, I want Ngannou. And the UFC kind of laughed him off. But that was him. Okay, we'll play you Chimaev. And Nate Diaz just went, give me Ngannou, do your worst. And I think that because they kind of backed him into a corner, there is two options. You know, what's he going to do? I think he's had to take this one out of pride and a little bit of out of ego. But he's a Diaz brother, and that's his superpower. I think it gives him a bit of extra strength.
Exactly. And, you know, it's also crazy to see a guy, like you said, like Chimaev, 10 years old when this guy's fighting, and here he is in the main event, no title involved, and people love him so much, and he's had to go through all this crap just to get here. And, you know, it doesn't matter what's going on. People want to see Nate Diaz fight. I'm curious that, like, we have been speaking a lot about Khamzat and his approach to this fight. I want to just quickly see what you think the Diaz camp is thinking for this fight. You know, because surely they're like, hey, like, our plan isn't for Nate to go in there and just get beat up for 3 rounds and then come out in the 4th or 5th round. So I'm curious, like, Nate's a really smart dude, and behind the scenes, there's a lot of game planning that goes on that people don't realize. How do you think they're approaching this one? Do you think there might be any surprises that people might not be expecting?
You know, it's a good question, and I have to go back to his last couple of fights, the most recent times we've seen him, and I think he did 2 clever things in the Masvidal fight. I think he tied him up very quickly. Like within 15 seconds, they were clinched and they were up against the fence. I mean, it worked out badly for him because Masvidal elbowed him on the break and kicked him in the face and opened him up. But I think that might be a sign of what he's going to do against Chimaev. I think he's going to try and fire blanket everything he does. Just try and smother him and slow him down. Like, see, with Leon, because he knows that Leon's not a fast starter, he played the opposite way with him. He like played games, and he did the whole Nick Diaz looking over his shoulder and, you know, the whole kiss my ass kind of thing. Like that. So that gamesmanship, that play, like extended the time when he didn't have to do any work in that first round. I don't know if he's going to be able to do that against Chimaev, so I think he's probably going to have to try and tie him up. I think he's going to slap him and box him up and try and frustrate him and get him to lose his cool and do things that are uncharacteristic, like swing to try and knock him out. I think if he can get Chimaev playing that game, then he's going to be fatigued much quicker, and that's where Nate starts to take over. It's a big if, of course, because I think even in that, like you said, he can't, you know, be beaten up for 2 or 3 rounds and then start to take over, because as we learned from the Masvidal fight, he might not be able to get there from the doctors. You know, he's got enough scar tissue on his face for Chimaev just to whiff a glove past him and he's going to open up. That's my main concern, is that we're going to be disappointed because there's no real conclusion and they're just going to add some more stitches to Nate's face before we uncelebratorily, you know, get rid of him. And that's a bit of a shame. But I don't know. We'll see. I'll be tuning in because I'm intrigued to see what happens. The more I've watched it, the more I can see that moment where Nate slaps him and Chimaev level changes into a guillotine, because crazier things have happened in mixed martial arts. And Nate is the kind of person that can manifest that kind of finish.
I also just quickly got to get your thoughts on the fight week, because Nate's not the kind of guy that's going to be backing down from anyone. And Khamzat Chimaev, he could be pretty animated sometimes when he's around his opponents. He could say stuff and sort of do stuff. He's very unpredictable. So I'm wondering, like, what are you expecting from this fight week? And even if we do see a press conference or if we do see these guys have exchanges, how are you anticipating that even goes down?
You know, I think Nate's going to be quite quiet. I don't think he's going to do anything to help the UFC promote this fight. I think because, you know, the likelihood is he's not getting any kind of pay-per-view points. He's going to be getting a flat rate. You know, they stopped giving him bonuses after the McGregor fight, which you've got to think is crazy. Pettis, you know, Masvidal and Edwards. I mean, if he didn't deserve a fight of the night bonus for some of those fights, so I think he's already fallen out of favor. So he's not going to be getting pay-per-view points. He's going to do as little as he can to promote the fight. He's probably not going to show up to the press conference. He won't want to do any media for it. And if he does, he's going to be very, very standoffish and difficult. I mean, you saw him the other day on his video with the USADA agent in the background.
Yeah.
He's beyond is beyond giving a damn, you know, and that's, he was already at that stage a while ago, and they've pushed him past that stage now. He's, you know, Nate's either he's gonna feel like he's being marched into a shootout and he's got the upper hand. That's how Nate's going to approach fight week, and he's just not going to care about anything else. I think it's going to be quite an interesting little case study, to be honest. But, you know, where Nate is right now and what happens to him afterwards is going to be just as interesting.
The insanity of Nick Diaz getting a 5-year suspension for marijuana, and then years later, Nate Diaz blowing smoke in the USADA guy's face, talking about how he wants his piss. I am wondering, though, what if, even though a lot of people are seeing this as kind of like a formality for Chimaev, what are you hoping to learn from this fight? Like, we're not going to sit here and pretend like this is necessarily his toughest fight in the division, but what are you hoping that you'd like to learn compared to, say, the Gilbert Burns fight?
You know, I'd be very interested to see him over 25 minutes. Yeah. You know, that's one thing that we've not seen. We've not seen him pushed. You know, I mean, he's just running through his opponents, and you know, and aside from Gilbert Burns, no one's really pushed him. And when he did meet some adversity, there were moments where he looked a bit sloppy and he got caught with a big shot. I mean, you know, there was a clash of heads. He went down on one knee, and it was quite a dramatic fight. And that's not the person that he was when he was coming into that fight. He was like this dominant and unknown force in the division. And I think Gilbert Burns kind of showed us a little bit that he is more human than a lot of people were thinking he was. But it doesn't mean he's not going to be an incredibly difficult fight for Nate, and a lot better than he was against Gilbert Burns. You know, we've also got to remember that, you know, March 2021, he was retiring because of the COVID that he caught in December of the year. Yeah. Like, we don't know how much of that was like a residual, you know, problem with his lungs, with his breathing. And there's no doubt that he's been training like an absolute animal since then. So I expect him to be in supreme shape. As you know, if you're going to do one thing to prepare for a Diaz, you've got to be in shape. If you don't know that, you're an idiot. Like, you can come in with your skills unpolished and you know, and everything else. You know, you don't have to do any strength and conditioning. But if you come in with no gas tank, you're a doomed man. And I think he's going to be absolutely ready for 25 minutes. We've just not seen it, so that's why I want to see that.
So, okay, if Khamzat wins here, like many people are predicting, kind of like take us through where you think you slot him in as far as the division goes. Because so we've got Leon and Usman. They look like they're going to be fighting in March. His title's probably not going to be defended again against the earliest, maybe around July, which is almost a year away from now. Do you have him fight Colby in the meantime? Do you have him wait? Do you have him to fight the winner of Masvidal Burns, or maybe give him that slot against the winner of Adesanya Pereira? What do you think happens with him next, Dan?
You know, it wouldn't surprise me if they move him up to middleweight for a fight, just to kind of hold him there, because he doesn't lose any ground at welterweight. I think it's going to be very difficult to sell Colby Covington on a fight against Chimaev. I really do. I think he could sell the fight going into it very well, but I think he would know how difficult that fight would be for him stylistically. There aren't really any other fights I'm interested in seeing aside from Colby Covington, and I just think Colby's going to be evasive of that. So, you know, their next option probably is middleweight. You know, see, I don't know if Pereira beats Izzy and we've got a new middleweight champion, it wouldn't surprise me if we see either him move up or Usman move up to middleweight instead of fighting Leon. I don't know. There's a few chaotic things that could happen. I wouldn't be surprised.
They might even do an immediate rematch. Israel and
Pereira. They might absolutely. But then, you know, you don't know what a champion wants to do. Like, sometimes they want to take some time away if they lose the belt. Sometimes they want to go back straight away. Like Paulo Costa's sitting around, the winner of Vittoria against Rob Whittaker's always an interesting one. I don't know. There's loads to think about. I don't know. Kind of spoiled for choice. I kind of think they're just going to hold him and wait for the welterweight belt to be ready for him to contest for.
Yeah, it's just so weird because people thought Usman was just going to go through Leon, right? And then it didn't happen. And it's like, I mean, even DC said it, the biggest loser in a sense was Chimaev, because it kind of complicates things for him moving forward. All right, on the flip side, this is kind of my last one on Nate. If Chimaev wins, obviously it's you know, big for his career, but it's what people expect. If Nate wins, how monumental would it be? How would you describe the win? Because this is like shades of him beating McGregor again in 2016 when McGregor was the cash cow, he was the favorite, and Nate went in there and played spoiler. This would be probably not on the same level because obviously McGregor brings in a bigger and a different audience, but the stakes are higher in the sense for Nate because he's leaving the company, and if he was to send a big fuck you to the company, no bigger one than, you know, beating their new cash cow, their new favorite, and then using that shit situation to boost his own popularity on the way out. How would you sort of describe that moment? And in general, win or lose, how would you sort of describe his legacy in the UFC come, you know, Sunday or Saturday in the States?
You know, I think if he wins here against Chimaev, it's a bigger wound to the UFC than it was beating McGregor the first time, because he was within the UFC at that point. So was Conor. So any drama that happened between them was going to be profited off by the UFC. So although you know, he came in and he beat McGregor, and you know, he cashed in on that and he got the second fight. He wasn't the only one cashing in. The difference here is that if he steps in there and he beats Chimaev, he takes away a lot of the momentum of Chimaev. Not all of it, because you know, Chimaev can quite easily rebuild. He's not even that far into his career. But it's what Nate takes with him. You know, like he steps away from the UFC in a very, very powerful position, or even just sits there on the table waiting to see what they bring to him, because he still might stick around. There's an amount of money that will land on the table that Nate would absolutely say yes to, I'm sure, but he would also leave with an immense amount of power, and wherever he goes, he's going to take a load of eyeballs with him. It'd be massive for him. And as far as his legacy in the UFC, it's been incredible. You know, you can go back, like he made his debut, his pro debut, 2004 in the WEC. Like he was fighting really, really tough opposition really early on, like Sir Hermes Franca. You know, he went in the Ultimate Fighter, went 3-0, subbed everybody, won the Ultimate Fighter finale against Gamburian, sprawling out, dislocating his shoulder. And then he went on a streak, triangles and guillotines, moved up to welterweight, stopped Rory Markham. It's been incredible watching him, really, you know, bounce up and down weight classes. He's embodied like defiance and you know, that teenage rebellious attitude that kind of stands up to the headmaster and stands up to the corporation. And I think there are a lot of people that have identified with him over the years. And he you know, he kind of took on the mantle that Nate Diaz was carrying early on, and obviously lost momentum when he got suspended. They're quite a unique phenomenon, the Diaz brothers are. And I think that, you know, no matter how he ends his relationship with the UFC, it's going to be sad to see him kind of move on and that era to be coming to an end.
And then Cesar Gracie was telling us that he sees a future where perhaps the UFC will have to renegotiate with Nate if they want to do another Conor fight, or who knows, maybe Conor then wants to leave the UFC to fight Nate in a boxing match, who knows. But whatever's going to happen down the track, it's good to see that Nate will have some power and decision-making abilities, will actually make the money that he deserves to show those crusty old deans where he's at. You gotta stand up, Dan. It's the rebellion. But let's talk about Tony Ferguson moving up to 170.
Sorry, just quickly. And speaking of the rebellion, rebel against the massive bush in your pants. Rebel against that. You want to be a man. You want to be the best man, the best version of yourself. Look no further. The Manscaped Lawnmower 4.0, the pound-for-pound greatest grooming tool in the world. It'll turn those balls of yours into balls smooth as eggshells, and you know, you'll be getting them sucked all day long by all sorts of people. That's the goal at the end of the day, right? And why not share that goal for other people? Maybe give it as a gift. You got Father's Day here, September 4th, for all the fathers, all the daddies, all the sugar daddies out there. The Performance Package 4.0, no better gift right there. Don't rack your brain. Nice and easy. Performance Package 4.0. You get the Lawnmower 4.0 with its 7,000 power of RPM. The motor, you've got the LED lights, you got the waterproof feature, you got the skin-safe technology with the ceramic blade, you got the wireless charger on the beautiful looking charge dock. So you can do like I do. You do your facial hair, you do your head. I did my head last night. You do the boys downstairs. That's maybe like a once in a week thing. Doesn't have to be every day. And then you just chuck it on the wireless charging dock. You don't even have to aim. You don't even have to find the hole. Nice and easy. Just toss it on there. It practically docks itself, and you just move on with your life. You're a busy guy, right? Dad's a busy guy. Also, the Performance Package 4.0 comes with the Weed Whacker ear and nose hair trimmer for those pesky nose hairs and those annoying ear whiskers, the Crop Preserver and the Crop Reviver ball toners, so that your balls are smelling fantastic all day long. Free underwear, free shared travel bag, free gifts, free shipping. What's not to love? Isn't that right, Dennis?
I mean, it gets even sweeter because you guys get 20% off thanks to the code word submission. That's right. Use the code word submission. Get 20% off. And like Casper mentioned, free shipping today and change your dad's life forever thanks to Manscaped. And guys, huge fight around the corner. Obviously, we're talking about Khamzat Chimaev versus Nate Diaz. And man, our friends at MyBookie are really delivering for all the Submission Radio listeners out there, because if you guys make a deposit, you'll double your money with MyBookie. That's right. All you got to do is use the code word submission to claim your deposit bonus. I'm talking about dollar for dollar all the way up to $1,000. MyBookie is the only sportsbook that gives you the skin and the picks to win, with dozens of predictions from real UFC fighters to make the most informed bet. You can bet anything, anywhere, anytime with our friends at MyBookie. And don't forget to tag us on your socials when you put down that cash. We love seeing people making money thanks to our friends at MyBookie and the code word submission.
That's it. And show us what you're buying with all your winnings and spendings. I want to see you and the boys rolling hot on all your, custom yachts from the MyBookie money, the SS MyBookie, or the SS Chimaev, or the SS Diaz, or whoever wins you the big ones. The odds are crazy against Diaz. So if you want to win some moolah, that's the pick. Also, for anybody who's traveling or anybody who wants safer internet, NordVPN, no better place to look. Dennis, I know you're going to New Zealand. What is it, in a matter of days? So what are you going to be doing there? You want to watch all your favorite, Aussie shows, Aussie Netflix, Aussie everything. But when you're in New Zealand, your computer knows, and your computer's going to be like, hey, man, screw you. You're not in Australia anymore. You can't watch any of this. NordVPN comes to the rescue. With one click, now your computer thinks you're back in Australia. Or maybe you say, screw you, Australian Netflix. You have shit shows. I want American Netflix, or maybe British Netflix, or maybe Canadian Netflix. Well, with one click and NordVPN, your computer can be anywhere on the planet, even Mars, like Elon Musk, if you wish. Also, block any internet service provider from accessing your data. Your internet service provider will no longer be able to see what you're looking at, especially the spicy websites. And if you're traveling maybe in an airport, or using dodgy Wi-Fi, maybe you've been using your neighbor's Wi-Fi for the last 6 years, it protects you there as well. Or if you're on any kind of not secure networks, so you don't have to worry about losing your credit card information or any of your other personal details. Isn't that right, Dennis?
Yeah, man.
Sorry. So best of all, no speed throttling or buffering issues when playing your favorite 4K videos, unlike with a lot of inferior VPNs. Go with the best. Go with NordVPN.
Yeah, that's right, man. And the best app in the game as well for your phone, whether you're using it on your computer or on your phone, it's so seamless and easy. And, you put it just right, Cass. You don't want to lose your information. You don't want to lose your credit card information. You don't want to sign up to new streaming platforms every time you travel somewhere else. And you want to be able to check out things like ESPN Plus, BT Sports, and all sorts of Hulu, and all sorts of great things that aren't available here in Australia. NordVPN helps you do that with a huge discount. And get this, 4 months free if you guys go to nordvpn.com/submission, or click the link in the description below. That's right, 4 months for free and a huge discount. And don't worry, this isn't some kind of ploy where it's like, all right, we got them now. They can't get out for the next 12 months, because Nord has a 30-day money-back guarantee. You could try it today risk-free. And if it's not up to your liking, boom, you can get going, you can go somewhere else, but trust me, you won't want to, thanks to NordVPN. But Dan, let's talk about Tony moving up to 170 against Jingliang. It's an interesting one because, it's a move back up to welterweight. And also, I'm wondering, what do you think about him returning after getting brutally knocked out by Michael Chandler? Not to mention, this is the first ever knockout defeat in his career. I'm just wondering, do you think that this move up in general to welterweight for Tony Ferguson, do you think it might be a little bit too soon?
I don't know. It might, to be honest, it might be the opposite. It might be too late. He might have needed a move up to welterweight before he hit 40. The starving of his body over these last how many years he's been on the lightweight roster, he could have probably done with moving up a little while ago, like a few other fighters have. There comes a point when I think that their weight cutting, takes it out of you, and he's quite a long rangey guy. I don't know. He might look really good at welterweight. We just don't know. I can't underestimate Tony Ferguson because he's such a wild card. I think this is an odd fight for him, though, because I don't think there's a great deal to gain for it. I mean, we saw the Leech. Like, the last thing that you remember from the Leech is not the Muslim Salikov fight. It's him getting ran through by Chimaev. And you know for sure that Tony Ferguson's not going to do that to him. Like, Ferguson's not going to pick the Leech up, walk him across the cage, take his back and choke. It's just not going to happen. It's going to be a messy, bloody, he's going to be a spinning mess of elbows, and it's going to be chaos. And the Leech has got a hard head, and he's got good defense, and he's got decent takedown defense, and he will scramble, and he's strong. It's just kind of an odd fight for him. Of all the fights that you could give these old boys, it's the same as Nate against the Leech. There are definitely other fights in this division that you could be giving him that would be more suiting to this point of his career. I mean, what's he going to do? Beat the Leech and then go on a streak of 3 fights and win the welterweight title? Of course he's not. We need to stop expecting too much of these older fighters. Let them be who they are at this point in their career and just enjoy, them as martial artists. Like, we need that veterans division, I'm telling you.
Do you think maybe he should have just waited for Conor? Like, the timelines seem to sync up, right? Conor's away. He's got to come back from his injury. Look, obviously, you don't really know what Conor's going to do. And you got to think he's probably going to go straight into a title fight. But, Tony just suffered that brutal knockout. I mean, it might have worked out for him. Like, him and Conor have the history. It could have been a really, really good fight for Conor to return to, and also a really nice payday for Tony Ferguson after his, years of service, so to speak.
That's it. I mean, they could have been smart about it and built Tony Ferguson up with a win, and then put him in a position where he's ready to receive McGregor, and that would take some of the negotiating power away from Nate. That would take the possibility of the Conor thing off the table, so it cuts Nate's options down. But I don't know. It just this fight just doesn't really make sense. It's like, oh, we've not got a title fight. We kind of need a co-main event. But everyone knows Tony Ferguson's name. Who's available? Oh, well, the Leech is on the same cycle as Chimaev. We'll put him in there. You know what I mean? It's kind of a bit haphazard, like not really well thought out matchmaking. Tony Ferguson just looks expendable here to me. It's a sad situation. I think there are fun fights that we can celebrate these guys, like masters divisions, where we can have the older guys fighting against one another, and they could be competitive and entertaining, and they're not risking too much by fighting these younger, bigger, more powerful individuals.
And no disrespect to Leech, but I think a win over Tony isn't really going to push him super far. This is going to be sad for a lot of Tony Ferguson fans. The other thing is, Leech has an absolute bomb of a left hand, which is what Justin Gaethje kept catching Tony Ferguson with in that infamous fight for Tony. If you're Tony, what would even be the game plan here? And are you hoping that maybe if, with a return to his old school weight, maybe he goes back to his old school ways and brings back the wrestling, and maybe employs a bit of a, Glover, Moneyball, Teixeira game plan, the sort of, I wouldn't say path of least resistance, but the one that makes a little bit more sense.
Get on base.
I think that's probably the smartest thing to do, especially because I hope that him moving up to welterweight would allow him to be a bit bigger and a bit stronger and a bit healthier at the weight. Not worry too much about diet during weight class, and really kind of boiling himself down, but to be a more physical version of himself and be able to push hard for 15 minutes and put a wrestling pace on the Leech. It makes absolute sense. Because at some point he might be able to scramble to the Leech's back, or he might be able to clamp onto a neck. He's still going to have long arms for this weight class. He had a long reach at lightweight, but what is it, like 75 inches or something? He's going to be able to wrap that darce up around the Leech. I mean, the Leech has got a big old head. If he gets his arm wrapped around him, it's going to be difficult for the Leech to get free from that. And he's already been put to sleep recently. I could see Tony doing that. But it's going to be a bit of a war of attrition. He's going to have to battle and wear the Leech down a bit, because that initial strength and power that Jingliang's got, that's going to be a different feeling for Tony Ferguson, even if he's coming up and being stronger at this weight class.
Yeah, I just don't understand some of the matchmaking here. Like you said, Dan, Tony is such an asset. You could get, 3 or 4 great fights out of him where the fans would love it, he would love it, and the opponents would be great. And I'd hate to see him have a rough return to welterweight against the Leech and potentially retire, because the matchmaking is just a bit silly in this regard. But anyway, I guess we'll see what happens with that one. And also, if you can have a good fight, a good opponent for McGregor, I don't know why you wouldn't sort of keep him around. But anyway, for now, we look forward to see what happens. Of course, you can follow the man, Dan. Oh, before we wrap, Dan, final question from me. I got to ask this. I saw some birdies on Twitter talking about a potential boxing move for Dan Hardy. Before we wrap up, what is the latest on your boxing move, man? Is this legit? Are you looking to go into boxing, stay in boxing now, away from MMA? What is the latest on the return and the boxing?
No, the Diego Sanchez fight has been rescheduled for November 12th. So that's the aim now. That's what I'm working towards. And then once that's done, I'll see. I don't know. I've got a couple of options have landed on the table recently that are looking interesting for the new year. Maybe an MMA fight against one of the old veterans, but I'll keep that one quiet for now because there's a few moving parts to that. Next one is November 12th against Diego boxing.
Okay. I can't wait to see that. I just needed to double check. You know, this is the place where we find out all the Dan Hardy information. This is really Dan Hardy Information Radio. But for now, you guys can follow the man at Dan Hardy MMA, of course, Full Reptile, the Dan Hardy Breakdown Show on BT Sport, the War Room, and his book, Full Reptile. Man, that Full Reptile gear, that is some sexy, sexy gear. If you guys get a chance to, these guys have, it's like the Peterman catalog over here. Like, these guys have a jacket, a hat. Like, hey, are you going outside? Like, wear these shoes. Like, unbelievable stuff. Make sure to grab it today. And Dan, thank you so much for your time, man.
Thanks, guys. Always a pleasure talking to you.